It was a cold, foggy evening in the heart of downtown. The streets were unusually quiet, except for the occasional sound of footsteps echoing through the narrow alleyways. Detective Arthur Lane adjusted his trench coat and lit a cigarette, his sharp eyes scanning the dimly lit street. He had been called to investigate a murder. A wealthy businessman named Mr. Harold Whitaker had been found dead in his office. The case was already making headlines, and the pressure was on to solve it quickly. The crime scene was on the third floor of a grand old building. As Detective Lane entered the office, he was greeted by the sight of Harold Whitaker slumped over his desk, a single gunshot wound to his chest. The room was in disarray, papers scattered, drawers pulled open, and a broken vase on the floor. It looked like a struggle had taken place. Lane examined the body carefully. There was no sign of forced entry, which meant Whitaker likely knew his killer. The detective noticed a faint smell of perfume lingering in the air, a woman's perfume. He made a mental note of it. The first suspect was Whitaker's business partner, Mr. Charles Grayson. Grayson had been seen arguing with Whitaker earlier that day. When questioned, Grayson admitted to the argument, but claimed it was about business matters. Harold was making reckless decisions, Grayson said, his voice trembling, but I would never kill him. Next, Lane turned his attention to Whitaker's secretary, Miss Evelyn Harper. She was a young, elegant woman with a nervous demeanor. When asked about the perfume, she confirmed it was hers, but insisted she had left the office hours before the murder. Mr. Whitaker was like a father to me, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I would never harm him. As the investigation continued, Lane discovered that Whitaker had been receiving threatening letters. The letters were unsigned, but they hinted at a hidden secret from his past. The detective wondered if someone from Whitaker's past had come back to seek revenge. The breakthrough came when Lane found a small, crumpled piece of paper in the wastebasket. It was a receipt from a nearby jewelry store, dated the day of the murder. The receipt was for an expensive diamond necklace, purchased by none other than Evelyn Harper. Lane's suspicions grew. Why would a secretary afford such an extravagant item? He confronted Evelyn, who broke down under pressure. She confessed that Whitaker had been blackmailing her. Years ago, she had been involved in a scandal, and Whitaker had used it to control her. The necklace was a bribe to keep her silent. But Evelyn swore she didn't kill him. Just as Lane was about to arrest her, a new clue emerged. The security guard of the building reported seeing a shadowy figure leaving the office around the time of the murder. The figure was wearing a long coat and a hat, but the guard couldn't see their face. Lane decided to revisit the crime scene. This time, he noticed something he had missed before: a small, almost invisible scratch on the window latch. The window, though closed, had been tampered with. Someone had entered or exited through it. Following this lead, Lane climbed down the fire escape outside the window. At the bottom, he found a button from a coat. It was a unique button, with a distinct pattern. He remembered seeing a similar button on Charles Grayson's coat during their earlier conversation. Confronting Grayson, Lane presented the button as evidence. Grayson's face turned pale. He confessed to the murder, revealing that Whitaker had discovered Grayson's embezzlement of company funds. Fearing exposure, Grayson had killed him in a fit of rage. The case was closed, but Detective Lane couldn't shake the feeling that justice was only partially served. The downtown streets returned to their usual hustle, but the shadow of death lingered in the foggy alleys, a reminder that even in the busiest parts of the city, secrets could be deadly.